Welcome back to Business Doctor. As discussed in the last video regarding problems, one of the problem was in communication, and that's what we are going to discuss today. Please remember that this is not a soft skill training or a communication class or a lecture. Just I want to highlight how you should be able to listen and communicate and some tips on how to do that. That is the purpose of this video. Communication has got three parts. One is the sender, the other one is the receiver, and the content what the sender is going to send it to receiver. It is a continuous cycle of sending or emitting the messages to the receiver, and sometimes the receiver might interrupt and give a feedback to the sender, so the sender has to listen. So that's why we clubbed it as listening and communication in this video. When we talk about the content has got two parts internally. One is the format of the content, and the other one is the delivery mechanism for the content. Let's now discuss about some scenarios. Okay. You think about what you want to communicate. For example, I'm thinking about how to communicate this to you. This I can think about in my native language or my mother tongue or the language in which I feel comfortable in talking to you. So the content, you have to think it over in your mind, what you are going to deliver, and there should be a purpose for which you are communicating. So that purpose has to be in the foremost of your communication. So once you decide what you have to communicate and you have chosen the way how you are thinking, and once you structure that thoughts, then you need to deliver to the receiver. Again, you may be having a proficiency in a particular language or a particular way of representation of that content. The receiver may have it in a different perspective or different way he or she can understand. So first you have to decide about the language in which you are going to communicate. For example, I am going to communicate this in English, or I could do it in Hindi or Tamil or French or Spanish, in any which language. Or I could also represent the whole thing as a object. Okay, in some places where you see objects are also represented. For example, you go to airport, the signatures and the signages are represented with some objects, like this is the departure hall, this is the arrival hall, like that. In railway stations you can see, in bus stand you can see, or if you look at some websites, there are also some objects, which is also a method of communication. So once you decide the language, the representation objects, then how you are going to deliver that. The delivery can be a handwritten, or it can be a typed on like an email or a postal mail, or it can be oral as we talk now. It could be oral, or it could be even a gesture. Okay, like don't do like this. Okay, so gesture is like this, or thumbs up is a sign of acceptance, which is also a way of communication. So once the method of delivery is clear, okay, then what happens is that there is also a medium in which you are going to deliver. For example, I can write in a piece of paper, or I can write it in a notepad or in a Word document and send it. Okay, so the medium of delivery also has to be clear how you are going to deliver that communication. Okay, so for example, if I talk a subject, which is, say for example, if you are a mechanical engineer, and I am going to talk about a space science in a Latin language with an object representation, it's very highly likely that you are not going to understand what I'm saying. So the language, the content, and the medium, everything has to be in a way the recipient can understand. That has to be upfront understood. Okay, suppose you are in a meeting, in a discussion, in an office where different people have come together, then how will you respond? How will you discuss with people? That will be a big challenge. So that should be, then people will use translators who can understand what this person says, and that translator will translate that to the other person's language in which he or she can understand. So with this illustration, now we get into the types of communication. It could be like one way. I am now communicating to you it's a one way. People talk in stages. People sometimes talk in webinars. That's a one-way communication. So the others just listen to that. There is no interaction between the receiver and the sender. Then sometimes it happens in a two-way, like there is a meeting between person A and person B, or there is a dialogue in a family which happens. So person A tells something and person B receives something, and person B in turn tells something and person A receives that. So that is the two-way communication. Multi-way is like in a group discussion or in an interview where 2 people or 3 people are asking the question. So I have to answer, or in a group discussion, different people can pick up a point and discuss. So in that case, how you are able to listen to what the other person says and respond, that is a communication. So that's a multi-way communication. So in the entire communication, what we should be focusing is that whatever is we are going to communicate, that needs to be loud and clear. So which means clarity is the basis of the communication, and you should address to the point or the subject in which you want to talk, not beating around the bush or trying to communicate in a different way, in a different sense, because the receiver might not have that kind of a patience if he is at a different level than you, or he or she may think that no, what you are communicating doesn't make any sense. Even if it is true for you, other person won't take it in the right sense. The other one is the choice of word. You have to use the right set of words for right purposes. So which means you should know the meaning, you should know the word, you should know how to use those words in an appropriate sentence. And while you are communicating, you should think. There is a context between your thinking process and your speaking process. For example, in oral communication. So when you are talking, your mind should also go along with the talking speed. If what happens is that if mind goes very fast, and if you talk at a different pace or a slower pace, then you won't be actually making the message to the receiver. Or if your brain is working very slow and you are talking very fast, then again it doesn't make sense to the receiver. So the speed at which your mind thinks and mind works and the way you talk, both have to be more or less synchronized so that the message is loud and clear. The other one is like the undulations in your words. Okay, suppose you ask what is your name, and if I say my name is Gokul, then it is not even audible to you. Okay, or I can shout like, no, my name is Gokul, like that I can also shout. But what happens is that normally if you are not confident enough in communication, what happens is that either the first word is very at a low decibel and gradually it increases, and at a point when you start thinking whether you are right or wrong and it stops. Okay, then the whole communication fails. Or sometimes the person may start with the josh like, yeah, my name is, then it gradually falls off, tapers down, and the last word or the last sentence it doesn't even audible to the receiver. So there should not be any such pattern of communication where there is an undulation, so that people will get completely off to the message you are communicating. And when there is a need for underlining certain or underscoring certain important words, then probably what you can do is that you can reiterate that word or re-emphasize, or you can even sometimes repeat that word to re-emphasize that particular point to give the importance. Particularly when we talk about in the oral communication, what happens is that there is a wave pattern you can see, okay, which this wave pattern you should avoid, and you should be, see, you can stress with the syllables, or you can give an importance, you can repeat, everything is fine. But if you start wavering or undulating, then it gives an impression to the receiver that you are not confident of what you are communicating. So that's a very, very important point, because when you are communicating in a team or in a one-on-one with your manager or with your professor to the student, in that kind of a communication, what people or the receiver would be expecting is that, assuming receiver is a one notch above in terms of that particular subject or in a professional manner, like a boss or a manager, then he or she might think that you are not confident, you don't know the subject. So which gives you a different kind of problems, and you will get into the different kind of issues in your life just because you are not able to communicate. But having said that, that does not mean that you need to be impolite or something. You can be nice, polite, precise, and focus on conveying the point you want to articulate. And you can be still firm enough to say even no, that is okay, but don't express your way of communication as a representation of arrogance or a rude behavior. You just say politely, yeah, I don't like it, or I like this. Okay. So there is a way you need to learn. Okay, now this is how you communicate. The other person, when he or she communicates to you, you need to have the right set of listening skills. Listening is not just hearing. Okay, you can hear whatever I'm saying, but listening is much more than hearing. Okay, you need to listen to the whole word or the whole paragraph or the whole context in which the subject is being talked about, and you should not stop listening. There are a lot of comedy in films which talk about this listening and communication skills. Okay. The point is that if you stop listening in halfway through, or when the first word is uttered, then what happens is that the message gets carried the entire sentence in the entire paragraph, or the words after 3 or 4 words, or the emphasis could be coming up in the later part of the sentence. And if you miss that, there is a very high chance that you are going to mess up with your job. The best way to remember these words, okay, is that you need to practice these words. Okay, so practice with your friends, practice with your family members, practice in a offline or non-official manner. Practice in whatever language you want to talk like. Okay, so in that language, try to remember many words and try to communicate. Start using these words in bits and pieces. But remember, when you are going to play in the Olympics, whatever you are practicing is at home or in your street where you are just trying to run. This is not going to win the case for you. Your case, you have to win the Olympics means you have to run in the Olympics and win the medal, which means that is the life. So all these things are only practice sessions. So you talking to your friends, you talking to your family or parents or children, that's only a practice session. So wherever you want to show off your professional experience, it could be in your academics, or it could be in your office, or it could be in your business, then you can, that's where you need to succeed. Okay. The other important thing is that when you are going to listen or communicate, the underlying thing is the comprehension. Okay, the comprehension capacity that we will discuss in the subsequent videos as well. But you need to have a comprehension capacity, like, okay, this word means this is the present tense, this is the past tense, when to use what whether it's a verb or it's a noun or it's a pronoun. That kind of thinking first you should have, and when to apply, what is the grammar. Everything has got a syntax. Syntax as in the computer science world, everything has got a syntax in life. So you have to use that syntax in an appropriate way. Some tips here is that remember as many words as possible with the help from your friends or reading newspapers or whatever, and try to get the meaning of that maybe through a dictionary or a thesaurus, and try to use that. Okay, and wherever it is not understood properly, okay, in case of a oral communication, for example, or even in a written communication, ask for that person to talk slower, or ask them to repeat what he meant, or ask them for an analogy which you can understand. Okay, so having discussed about this listening, you have to practice. It is like, the radio is always on. You have to tune to that particular frequency to hear. Like that, when you talk, the receiver might tune to what you are saying. The same way, when the other person talks, you must tune your mind, ears, to open out for that particular frequency. Practice that so you can have a listening comprehension, or even a reading comprehension, okay, or a speaking comprehension kind of practice sessions you can have, and try to practice at home. Like, in case you feel shy when you are talking about, okay, my only advice is that you can be a fool for 5 minutes than be a fool forever. So if somebody is going to, your parents or your friend or somebody or your colleague is going to feel like, okay, you are stupid or a fool, then better you be a fool for 5 minutes rather than be a fool forever. So which means that you have to practice. Once you start practicing, then it will take you to a completely different level where it becomes a skill. So how to develop the skill? What is the difference between skill, talent, competence, knowledge? These things we will discuss in the upcoming videos. Hope my communication to you is clear and you are able to understand, receive it properly, comprehend it. Try practicing it. Good luck. See you in the next video. Thank you. Have a nice day. Cheers.